Brandon Hale sees an old black man in a worn jacket and assumes he's just another fraud to expose, another nobody to humiliate for likes. But what he doesn't know, that triangle patch isn't stolen valor. It's classified. And the man wearing it, a silent legend who saved lives without ever asking for credit. Stick around because when the judge speaks up, and we're quiet, hero goes viral, Hale's badge won't elevate him. It'll bury him. They thought he wore power. What they didn't know is real honor never needs to shout. Share where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Hit that subscribe button to catch all our Brandon Hale straightened his silk tie, feeling the satisfying weight of his city official badge as he strode through Clara's diner. The morning crowd parted before him, recognizing his authority, as he fixed his gaze on the old man in the worn jacket. The triangle patch caught the fluorescent light, mocking everything Brandon Hale stood for. "Well, well, what do we have here?" Brandon Hale's voice carried across the diner, silencing the breakfast chatter. He planted his hands on the sticky table, leaning into the old man's space. "Hal Mercer, is it funny how you're not in our veterans registry?" The old man's silence made Brandon Hale's jaw clench. He reached out, fingers closing around the mysterious triangle patch. "Care to explain this? Because I know every veteran in this town, and you're not one of them." Someone's phone camera clicked. Perfect. Brandon Hale's chest swelled with pride. Let them record. Let them see him protecting the town's integrity. He yanked the patch threads, straining. "Stolen valor is a serious offense, Mr. Mercer." The old man's weathered hands remained steady around his coffee cup, those eyes holding something that made Brandon Hale's certainty waver for just a fraction of a second. But no, he was Brandon Hale's city events coordinator, guardian of their town's reputation. "Sir," Clara herself appeared, coffee pot trembling in her hand. "That's Hal Mercer. He's been coming here for—" "I know exactly who he isn't." Brandon Hale cut her off, pulling out his phone. "And Twitter's about to know, too. Of course, stolen valor is trending, and our town won't harbor frauds." A young woman at the counter raised her phone, higher, live streaming. Brandon Hale flashed her his most authoritative smile. "Make sure you get this, folks. Someone's about to learn that. Mr. Hale." The voice behind him was quiet, but carried the weight of mountains. "That triangle patch you're touching, it's classified. Above your clearance level." Brandon Hale turned to find Judge Monroe standing in the doorway, her black robes stark against the morning light. Something in her tone made his fingers release the patch. "And that registry you're so proud of." Judge Monroe continued, each word falling like a gavel. "It doesn't include special operations, never has." The diner had gone deathly quiet. Brandon Hale's badge felt suddenly heavy like a stone, dragging him down. His phone buzzed, notifications already pouring in from the live stream. "Will my authority survive this challenge? 20 years building this position, knowing every detail, controlling every narrative about our veterans." But now, that look in Mercer's eyes. "What else don't I know? What else have I missed in my certainty?" Type truth if you've ever been absolutely certain about something, until you weren't. Brandon Hale heard the young woman say into her phone, her livestream counter-climbing. Brandon Hale's fingers found his badge again, polishing it compulsively as he had done every day for 2 decades. But for the first time, his reflection in its surface looked different. Distorted. Wrong. The morning sun caught the triangle patch on Hal Mercer's jacket, and Brandon Hale felt the first crack in his carefully constructed world of absolute certainty. The real question wasn't about Mercer's legitimacy anymore. The question was, how many other truths had Brandon Hale's pride blinded him to? Hale mistake was already trending. Brandon Hale stares at his phone, watching the notifications multiply. His carefully crafted post about exposing the suspicious veteran has garnered hundreds of shares. But something feels off. The leather chair in his mahogany-lined office, usually a throne of comfort, suddenly feels stiff and unwelcoming. Another fraud exposed. Brandon Hale mutters, adjusting his golden nameplate, a symbol of his decade-long crusade to maintain order in River's Edge. The morning sunlight streaming through his office window catches the engraving. Brandon Hale, Director of Community Standards. But today, the gleam seems to mock rather than reassure. His fingers trace old newspaper clippings on his wall, each documenting his previous victories. The street vendor without proper permits, the charity organization with questionable paperwork. His mentor, former director James Morrison, had taught him well. Control is maintained through constant vigilance, Brandon. Never let anyone slip through the cracks. But Darlene's words from the diner keep echoing in his mind. You don't know what that triangle patch means, do you, Brandon Hale? The way she'd said his name, like it was something bitter on her tongue, makes his stomach churn. He pulls up military insignia databases on his computer, searching frantically for anything resembling the worn patch on Hal's jacket. A knock at his door startles him. Mr. Hale, sir. His assistant, Linda, peers in. The archives you requested about previous veteran verifications. She places a thick folder on his desk, hesitating. Sir, my father served with a unit that had a similar patch. That will be all Linda. Brandon Hale snaps his hand, unconsciously adjusting his tie. Once alone, he opens the folder, discovering a pattern he'd never noticed before. Every complaint about veteran credentials in the past 5 years had been initiated by him. Every single one. His phone buzzes again. A local veterans group has shared his post, but not in support. Brandon Hale continues his witch hunt against our heroes. The caption reads, comments flood in, sharing stories of silent warriors, of classified missions, of patches that meant more than any paper credential could convey. Brandon Hale's hand trembles as he reaches for his nameplate, the gold surface now showing his reflection. Had his face always held that hint of desperate authority, a memory surfaces, his father's voice, thick with disappointment. You couldn't qualify for service, son. But that doesn't mean you have to prove yourself this way. The diner's security footage plays on his computer screen. His own voice, sharp with accusation, Hal's silence dignified, Darlene's eyes knowing. A study from the Veterans Mental Health Initiative catches his attention. Silent service members often carry the heaviest burdens. Comment below if you've seen Brandon Hale's true colors, appears on his feed, followed by a flood of revelations. Other veterans speaking up about his previous investigations. Former colleagues sharing stories of his obsession with control. His nameplate feels heavy in his hands now. The same hands that had pointed accusingly at Hal's patch, that had signed countless citations, that had built walls instead of bridges. Research papers on his desk speak of institutional bias, of how personal inadequacy often drives persecution of others. Type truth if you're ready to expose more of Brandon Hale's vendetta against our veterans. The CTA spreads like wildfire across social media platforms. Brandon Hale's empire of control, built on the foundation of his own insecurities, begins to show its cracks. The morning light no longer catches his nameplate. He's placed it face down, unable to bear its reflection of what he's become. His phone won't stop buzzing, each notification a reminder of the growing storm. But it's not the public outcry that terrifies Brandon Hale most. It's the dawning realization that in his desperate quest to verify others' worth, he never once questioned his own. Brandon Hale's fingers trembled as they traced the edges of the weathered newspaper, clipping his normally steady hands, betraying the first real cracks in his carefully constructed facade. The memorial's pristine surface seemed to mock him, now each polished stone, a silent accusation of his ignorance. 6 hours had passed since his confrontation with Hal Mercer, and the world he'd built was beginning to crumble around him. The sprinkler's rhythmic hiss faded into background noise as Brandon Hale stared at the photo, his throat tightening at the sight of that triangle patch, barely visible in the grainy image. 20 years ago, a nameless hero had pulled young Tommy Peterson from a burning car. Now that same patch haunted him, worn proudly on Hal Mercer's jacket. The jacket Brandon Hale had so arrogantly dismissed. His phone buzzed incessantly. The morning's video of his confrontation with Hal had already reached 50,000 views. Dr. Hale shame was trending locally, and his office voicemail was full. Brandon Hale's chest constricted as he read comment after comment, each one peeling away another layer of his carefully maintained reputation. "Sir," his assistant's voice wavered at the door. "The Veterans Affairs Committee is requesting an emergency meeting. They've seen the video." Brandon Hale's hand instinctively reached for his golden lapel pin, the symbol of his office that had always brought him comfort. Now it felt heavy-tainted. He'd worn it proudly this morning while berating a true hero. The irony made him nauseous. The sound of distant cameras clicking drew his attention to the window. News vans were pulling up outside City Hall. Brandon Hale watched as reporters gathered their presence, a physical manifestation of the walls closing in around him. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message from the mayor herself. "My office now." An inner voice that had been silent all morning finally spoke up. "How many other Hal Mercers have you dismissed? How many heroes have you stepped over on your climb to the top?" The questions echoed in his mind as he caught his reflection in the memorial's surface. He barely recognized himself. The lapel pin glinted dully as he adjusted his tie, a nervous habit he'd developed over years of public appearances. But this time, instead of confidence, it brought only shame. Brandon Hale's empire, built on appearances and political maneuvering, was dissolving faster than the morning dew on the memorial's pristine surface. Have you ever watched someone's carefully built world unravel drop one if you've witnessed pride come before a fall? His phone lit up with another notification, an old photo of Hal Mercer receiving a silver star, the triangle patch clearly visible. The caption read, "Meet the man our city official humiliated. Decorated Special Forces veteran, silent guardian of our memorial for 15 years. Brandon Hale's legs nearly gave out as he sank onto a nearby bench. The morning sprinklers had stopped, leaving behind an eerie silence, broken only by the distant murmur of gathering crowds and the sound of his own ragged breathing. He could feel the weight of his mistake crushing his chest, each breath a reminder of how spectacularly he had misjudged, how completely he had failed. The memorial stood as a silent witness to his unraveling its polished surface, reflecting the truth he'd been too proud to see. Brandon Hale, who had built his career on appearing to serve the community, was being undone by a man who had actually served, silently, humbly, and without recognition. Officer Brandon Hale's hands trembled as he stared at the classified files spread across his mahogany desk, the weight of truth crushing his carefully constructed world of authority and control. The metallic click of his office door seemed to echo his racing heartbeat, each document revealing another layer of Hal Mercer's extraordinary service record. Special operations, classified rescue missions. The triangle patch that Brandon Hale had mocked now burned in his memory like a brand of shame. Brandon Hale's fingers traced the official seal on the documents, remembering how he'd sneered at that worn jacket just days ago. The security camera footage from that confrontation played on his computer screen, his own voice dripping with contempt. "That patch doesn't mean anything here." The video had already reached 500,000 views on YouTube, Jacques Orchoner's Quiet Heroes, trending nationwide. "Sir," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "CNN is holding on line 1. They want a statement about the viral video." Brandon Hale reached for his badge, the polished metal catching the afternoon light. Once a symbol of his authority, it now felt like a weight of judgment. His reflection in its surface showed a man he barely recognized, the man who had humiliated a true hero for a cheap display of power. The classified files detailed missions that read like fiction: hostage rescues, covert operations, lives saved at tremendous risk. And through it all, that triangle patch, the same one Brandon Hale had dismissed as meaningless, represented the highest level of classified service. His office phone wouldn't stop ringing. Email notifications pinged incessantly. Quiet. Heroes had spawned thousands of stories from veterans sharing their own experiences with prejudice and dismissal. Brandon Hale's name appeared in every news cycle, his actions dissected and condemned. The badge in his hands grew heavier with each passing moment. A memory surfaced his father, also a city official, teaching him that authority meant responsibility. "Power isn't about making others feel small," he'd said. "It's about lifting people up." Brandon Hale stood, decision crystallizing. He straightened his tie, adjusted his nameplate, and faced the camera his assistant had set up. The red light blinked on, and he began. "My name is Brandon Hale, and I was wrong. To Hal Mercer, and every quiet hero who serves without seeking recognition, I offer my deepest apology. Let my actions serve as a reminder that true authority comes not from a badge or a title, but from how we treat others. Type respect if you believe in honoring our quiet heroes." His fingers moved across the keyboard, drafting an official proclamation. Tomorrow would be declared Quiet Heroes Day in their town. The triangle patch would be displayed prominently in City Hall, a reminder of the service that asks for no acclaim. Brandon Hale's phone buzzed. A text from his father, "Proud of you, son. This is real leadership." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across his office as Brandon Hale prepared to face the press. His badge caught the light one final time, no longer a symbol of power, but a reminder of the responsibility to serve all citizens, especially those whose sacrifices remain untold. Share this if you believe in second chances and standing up for what's right. Quiet heroes. The camera's red light blinked off, but Brandon Hale's journey toward redemption was just beginning. Tomorrow he would meet with Hal Mercer again, not as an authority figure, but as a humbled man ready to learn from a true hero. Brandon Hale stands before the packed town council chamber, his once commanding presence now softened by the weight of understanding. The crisp sound of paper crinkling in his pocket echoes his racing heartbeat. 3 weeks ago, this room had been his domain, his personal theater of power. Now it feels like a court of judgment, with every face in the crowd reflecting back the truth he'd spent a lifetime avoiding. My fingers brush against the empty spot on my lapel where my badge once gleamed. The same badge that now rests in a glass case at the library's entrance, positioned next to Hal Mercer's weathered jacket, with its mysterious triangle patch. A display titled, "Silent Service: Two Faces of Public Duty," that draws more visitors daily than any of my grand municipal projects ever did. The microphone picks up my shaky exhale as I begin. "For 15 years, I've stood at this podium speaking about service to our community. I used fancy words, quoted statistics, and wore my authority like armor. But I never truly understood what service meant until I tried to humiliate a man whose silence spoke volumes more than all my speeches combined." My eyes find Hal in the back row, sitting as still as a statue, his new jacket barely distinguishable from the old one I'd mocked. The memory of that day burns fresh. My sneering voice, my contemptuous gesture, the phone cameras recording what I thought would be another triumph of authority over insignificance. Hale must go still trends occasionally, a digital reminder of my arrogance. When I confronted Hal Mercer about his shabby appearance on our town square, I thought I was defending our community's image. Instead, I revealed the poverty of my own character. That triangle patch I ridiculed. It marked him as part of an elite special operations unit that ran silent missions, saving countless lives. While I was collecting accolades and posting self-congratulatory photos, Hal was serving without fanfare, without recognition, without need for either. The truth feels like fire in my throat. My badge was a symbol of authority, but his jacket represented true service. I wore mine to dominate. He wore his to remember fallen brothers. I sought the spotlight. He embraced the shadows where real work gets done. A tear escapes despite my professional facade. The hardest lesson wasn't losing my position or facing public shame. It was realizing that true dignity doesn't need validation. Hal never needed to prove his worth. His actions spoke for him. I'm the one who needed to prove something, and in doing so proved only my own blindness. The silence in the chamber grows heavy. Every phone is raised, recording this moment of public confession. Soon it will join the millions of views of my original confrontation. But this time, the viral spread will carry a different message. Today I'm announcing the establishment of the Silent Service Scholarship funded by the sale of my vacation home. It will support veterans pursuing public service careers with one condition: they must mentor city officials like myself in the true meaning of service. Share this if you believe in redemption through action, not just words. Hal remains motionless in his seat, but as I step down from the podium, his slight nod carries more weight than all the applause that follows. The glass case in the library will stand as testament to our shared story. His jacket and my badge symbols of how power and service can look so similar, yet mean such different things. Silent service begins trending within minutes, but for the first time in my life, I don't check my phone. Instead, I walk to the back of the room, extend my hand to Hal, and finally learn to embrace the power of silence. Type "silent speaks" if you've ever learned wisdom from those who speak least. The ultimate truth wasn't in the words I'd prepared or the gestures I'd practiced. It was in understanding that true service like Hal's silent dedication needs no audience. My badge now serves a greater purpose in that display case than it ever did on my lapel. Teaching others what took me too long to learn dignity isn't declared, it's demonstrated.